After a 12-day rally at the Nigerian equities market, investors are taking position to lock in profits as listed companies are set to release their third quarter earnings. And I have Muktar Mohammed, an analyst at Asaar Investment. He joins me now to discuss the sentiment in the market today. Thank you so much for your time, Muktar. What are we seeing leading sentiment for investors today?
Thank you, Kenneth. Sentiment is still all about profit taking, especially in equities that they gained so much in. So that's the sentiment, and we're not surprised about that sentiment. Like you said in your report, we have 12 days of rally. So investors are beginning to take profit and then thinking of their re-entering strategy. By and by that, very soon they are expecting the third quarter results to begin to flood into the market. So it's all about strategy, it's all about profit taking, and it's all about value investment.
All right, but looking at how investors are positioning for the third quarter earnings, do you think it's going to be a story about dividends or is there something else lurking around?
We're going to see capital appreciation is going to play a major part this time, not only dividend, but dividend is the cash cow that might play a part towards the final quarter result. But investors will look at capital appreciation. So we will still see investors looking at those capital appreciation, take profit again after those third quarters have come in before they begin to think of the dividend payout. Even if they have an idea of the dividend payout from most of all this equity, especially the banks and the conglomerate, they will by and by be looking for more of capital appreciation before they begin to think about dividends.
Right now, before you just came on, I was just speaking to the CEO of the NGX regulation, talking about the planned listing on the bourse here in Nigeria here by the NGX group. I'd like to get your thoughts on how is the market anticipating that listing.
Well, maybe they've not given the market so much enlightenment. Maybe when the listing comes, then the market will begin to key into it. But as it stands now, there's not so much enlightenment or so much buzz around the listing. But maybe when after the listing, then we'll begin to see those buzz around it. But you not forget, like she rightly pointed out, you do listing by introduction, and nobody seems to benefit so much by listing by introduction until when they start seeing those numbers come out there. That's when investors begin to take note of it. As it stands now, we won't see investors scrambling for it like we want, but maybe after we start getting their results, then we begin to anticipate what they will bring to the market. Then investors will begin to look at that equity. But as it stands now, I think it's more or less like, let's see how far they go.
All right, now let's get into other news making rounds here. So far, we just talked about that acquisition, Access Bank acquiring a minority stake in a bank in Botswana there. I'd like you to speak to what this means for Access Bank, in the Nigerian market and what your take is on this acquisition.
Well, Access Bank have been going about this acquisition for a while now. Like you said in your introduction, they are now almost in 10 African countries. They pride themselves, they want to be an African bank for all Africa. And I think it's good when you look at the strategy. They're in South Africa, they're in Botswana. One must we always remember that Botswana is one of the fastest growing economy in Africa. We don't have details of what the bank they acquire, what stake they play in the Botswana economy until we begin to get those details. But by and large, it's good for Access Bank. It's good. The type of acquisition they are doing is more or less like a strategic acquisition because they are not just going about all over Africa and acquiring banks. They are going by acquiring banks in strategic nations in Africa. They have acquired in Angola, Kenya, Botswana, South Africa. So it's strategic, and most of those equity banks that they are acquiring, you see that they have a role to play part of the economy. Like if you look at the South African owned that they acquire is more or less in the real estate space and the consumer space. If you look at the one in Kenya, also have to do with more or less the corporate banking. So I think they are getting their strategy right, but investors in the Nigerian Stock Exchange will not begin to see those dividends or those dividends of this acquisition anytime soon. Because when it comes to acquisition, there's a lot of things that goes into it. But we begin to reap those reward from those acquisitions when the numbers start coming in, maybe in a year or 2 years time, before we begin to see those numbers placed in those figures play in their earnings.